Hi, I'm GM Matthew Sadler.
And I'm WIM Natasha Regan. Welcome to this video, which is part of the series on AlphaZero opening ideas. In this video, we're going to be looking at the Caro-Kann advanced variation, and AlphaZero plays a new line against the Khenkin-Arkell variation. So AlphaZero is playing 5c3, which is an idea that hasn't really been seen in top play. It's one of a number of ideas that AlphaZero likes to try on move 5, and this line gives rise to a lot of possibilities. And in this video, we're going to see a number of different AlphaZero attacking ideas, such as sacrificing the exchange or giving up a pawn. Sometimes it gives up the pawn on e5. This is one of two videos we're doing on the opening. In this video, we're covering black defenses of queen c7 and knight d7. In the next video on this, we will look at the black line knight c6. Okay, time to show you some of the games.
Yeah, let's have a look. Right, let's have a look at this. So 1e4 is the start move, and then c6, and these moves are the ones stipulated in the book, or rather, these are just the moves that were given to AlphaZero and Stockfish, and then they just had to work things out for themselves. So how did the game go? Went d4, d5, e5. Undoubtedly AlphaZero's favourite move against the Caro-Kann. Stockfish tends to like either taking on d5 or playing knight c3, but AlphaZero pretty exclusively plays 3e5. And now the move that Stockfish played most of all, which is 3c5, which is an unusual move. I mean, first played by Botvinnik against Tal in the or first played, but I suppose you'd say that's kind of the first time that that I really noticed it, I guess, is in the Botvinnik-Tal return match. But it actually in recent years, there's two players, Igor Khenkin, very strong Israeli grandmaster, and our own grandmaster Khenkin-Arkell, have played this an awful lot, which is why we call it the Khenkin-Arkell variation. So black.
Nigel Shorts also played it for black, because I remember at an Olympiad in 1994 in Moscow, he borrowed my book on this for black.
Ah, it might. Could it be? It might be that he played it.
One of his games.
He might.
In those days we didn't use computers; we just used books.
Yeah,
and I said I had the book on it, and so he said, "Can I borrow it?" So I let him.
Oh, okay. I just wonder, it might have been even from the white side, actually, because he was a big expert in the advance from the white side with 1e4. But I don't know.
Might have been the white side, but he was definitely expecting to get a game in it.
Ah, interesting. Oh, funny. It's White's played an awful lot of lines against this, and actually AlphaZero plays quite a few different lines against it as well, which suggests that it sort of feels that the basic positions that you reach are pretty similar, and that the move orders don't actually matter that much. But just in this video, we're going to concentrate on something very interesting that, as Natasha said, has barely been played. It's d takes c5, e6. And then this move c3. So when I saw it, I thought, well, that's a fairly normal move. The pawn on c3 supports d4, so that means that white is just supporting the occupation of that d4 square with the white piece, which is pretty typical. I mean, we've kind of transposed to a sort of French structure. Where black has wasted a move with c6 to c5, but black's hoping that since the centre has been closed with e4 to e5, that doesn't make too much difference. What really surprised me about AlphaZero's play was how aggressive it managed to make this move c3. And we're going to see a lot of, in the next couple of videos, we're going to see a lot of sharp b4 thrusts, actually, which just surprised me a lot, the way the game's developed so aggressively. So Stockfish tried a number of ideas. One of the points of c3 is that if black plays bishop c5, then white can play queen g4 and attack the pawn on g7 directly. So Stockfish tended to wait, in actual fact, to play either knight d7, queen c7, or knight c6. So knight c6 we'll have a look at in the next video, and we'll start by having a quick look at knight d7. So knight d7, well, attacks the pawns on c5 and e5. Looks a little odd in some ways, but in the Advance Caro-Kann, black often swaps around his knights, actually. So this knight comes to d7, and the knight on g8 comes e7 to c6. And that's quite a nice form of development because the pawn on e5 stops the knight coming to f6, so it's quite nice just to bypass that by bringing the knight to c6. So AlphaZero played knight f3, bishop takes c5, knight bd2, just coming round to b3, just to attack that bishop on c5 and also occupy the d4 square. Stockfish tried some disruption with queen b6. a5 was met by knight b3 just in time, and black doesn't. You'll see it quite often, but black doesn't really want to retreat this bishop to e7. Because then the knight on g8 wouldn't have, would have to come to h6, which is a touch risky because of, bishop h6 can happen for a start. So Stockfish gave up the bishop pair, and AlphaZero just consolidated in the centre with these moves. Normally I'd stop it here and say, this was just a clear advantage to white. It's a French that hasn't really gone very well for black. White's got the two bishops. That knight on b5 is just stopping black's queenside play. And there's this very simple white plan of advancing the kingside pawns. It could be AlphaZero's favourite h4, h5, h6, or you could play for g4 and f5. I just want to show you the rest of the game, though. We've actually featured an extract from it in our video on double pawns, so do take a look at that one as well. But it's definitely worth seeing again. Absolutely beautiful. So castles, b6, queen c2, very nice move actually, followed by a4. Not normally recommended to move the pawns in front of your king when you've castled, but this cements that knight on b5 and just stops black from getting any sort of counterplay on the queen side. And obviously black doesn't want to start trying to open up the king side with f6, because that just opens lines that white is going to be trying to open anyway on the king side. So rook c8, bishop d4, takes, queen b7, rook f1, just aiming for g4 and f5. Stockfish takes the opportunity to get the two bishops, attacks the e5 pawn. Rook takes d5. Black was probably a little bit afraid that white would play f6 at this stage, so takes on f5 and plays.
I reckon white would have.
Ah, definitely. Yeah, we know AlphaZero. It's rook d1 and rook d8. And this is where it starts getting really quite beautiful. So, white's got a very nice advantage here. That bishop on b5 really cuts across the black position. It gives an entry point into d7. It also stops a rook from coming to e8. So white's actually guaranteed control of the d-file, and black can't even counterattack very well against the e5 pawn. But of course, as always with Stockfish, black's managed to keep the position together and stay reasonably solid. There are all sorts of long-term plans like h4 to h5 to h6. We know those plans very well. But what AlphaZero does is remarkable. Really, really quite incredible. It plays rook d6, knight e4, attacking that rook on d6. So you sort of feel, oh, has black made a mistake here? If I go rook d7, then, black can just take and this pawn on e5 is hanging. But that wasn't AlphaZero's idea at all. We always talk about this, exchanging off the opponent's active pieces, leaving him with passive pieces. Well, AlphaZero just isn't afraid to do that, even when it costs material. And played this stunning move, queen d3. which in a way also leaves a fork open on f2, you know. So, I mean, knight f2 would allow rook takes d8, but it's an incredibly a visual move, as Grandmaster Julian Hodgson always said. And well, we've seen this very often as well, that you know, AlphaZero really often seems to feel that a knight on a central outpost is worth a rook, and it's often very willing to sacrifice a rook for that knight on the central outpost. Well, and here it gets an extra little bonus along the way, because it gets this monstrous passed d pawn. And if we're talking about, you know, passive pieces, well, you know, have a look at those rooks on d8 and a8. That bishop b5 pawn d7 combination stops the rooks on d8 and a8 from getting active. Now it's only the queen that's.
That bishop is always going to be worth the rook, isn't it? Because there's no way it can ever be dislodged from that square, and the pawn on a4 as well. Those two together just can't be dislodged by any of black's pawns or pieces.
That's right.
Point, so.
Yeah, that's right. I mean, actually, it made me think a lot of. So Mihai Marin, Romanian grandmaster, has done a lot of very good DVDs on positional play, and one of the things he talks about that he said he learned from the Russians was this concept of stable pieces. You know, finding these amazing outposts from which your pieces can't be driven away, and that's, you know, really got a huge value in the position. And what you're saying is that exactly. You know, the bishop on b5 is such a rock on there, can't ever possibly be driven away. So, you know, its value increases enormously. And, well, I mean, I think, again, these are the type of things I think that, that AlphaZero seems to understand very, very well. So, the game proceeded queen e5, it went queen d2, actually just trying to get a rook e1 into e8. So Stockfish played rook f8, making sure that it can get its other rook into d8 in that case. And then this incredible idea, which again, I don't think I would have guessed in quite a while. Queen d4, so obviously looking to take the pawn on b6. So black swaps off queens. And now, well, if you remember that that we looked at this in our video on double pawns, then you'll know why. C takes d4. What an idea! What an idea!
I wasn't expecting that, right?
No. I mean, I certainly wasn't either. The key idea is that that pawn on d7 will obviously become less dangerous if black can get the king to e7. So white's actually just going to put the pawn to d6, cover e7, keep you know, there's like a cordon around that d7 pawn, you know, and saying no one can approach. And then the white king is just going to move up. So, you know, in the game, rook e1, king d2, d5, d6, king d3, and then that king simply marched all the way up to c7, and then you play rook e8, and it's just a win.
This is really funny. I like this.
Yeah.
A lot.
Nice. It's gorgeous, isn't it? It's really, really nice. This, you know, really just superior strategy, you know, from AlphaZero. Just incredible, really incredible. So yeah, again, it's, you know, it's one of those games where when you look at it, you think, what? And then you just say, oh, amazing. You know, just have so many moments like that with AlphaZero games. You know, really incredible. So that was knight d7. So a move that Stockfish also played was quite a clever one. Queen also c7. The idea is attack the pawn on e5. So white plays knight f3, and then you can take the bishop on c5. And white doesn't have queen g4 anymore. So, you know, black's kingside is safe. And you also, you know, delay the development of the knight on b8. So you can still put it on d7 if you like. And I was expecting some quiet development, you know, bishop d3, knight bd2, that sort of stuff. But AlphaZero does something quite incredible, actually. It played b4, which surprised me a little bit already. So, I mean, in these positions, when you go b4, black doesn't really want to play bishop e7, because then it's knight on g8, you know, doesn't have a good development square, as we explained before. So bishop b6 is the absolutely normal reaction. But here AlphaZero spies something, and well, it's to do with the fact that black's played queen c7, which well, I wouldn't have ever expected that it could be a drawback in this way. White plays c4, a very quick c4. White's actually here, so trapping the bishop on b6. And, well, if black plays d takes c4, there's this extremely unpleasant move, knight a3. And black's threatening knight b5 to d6, again exploiting that queen on c7. And otherwise black will play knight c4 takes d6. So a typical idea would be queen d7, queen c2, knight c6, knight c4. This is what I was analysing, and well, the engines feel that this is the best. I mean, I thought it was just decisive. My engines found this move just to defend the knight on b4 and cover the d6 square. But actually that d6 blockade is not a long-term thing. White could even just wait this move, bishop e2, and then play this unpleasant move, bishop e3, challenging the bishop on c5. And well, this was the best move that my engines found, but it's really, really unpleasant. I mean, look at that coming in. Queen f3, knight f7. You just do not want to be playing this position with black. So c4, unexpected, but very strong move. So Stockfish played a6, just to cover the b5 square and also to give the bishop a retreat square back to a7. So AlphaZero just keeps on developing nicely. Bishop b2, knight c6, a3. I mean, of course, in some ways this move c3 to c4 has wasted a tempo, but black wasted a tempo with c6 to c5. So, it's they basically balanced each other out there. Knight e7 was played by Stockfish. Knight d2, knight g6, and then this interesting move rook c1, which introduces a theme. Actually, not only in this specific variation with queen c7, but we'll also see it in knight c6 as well. This far-flung pawn on e5, White's really just got to be prepared to, sacrifice it, give it away, and well, exploit the fact that if you take that pawn, it opens up that beautiful diagonal a1, h8 for the bishop on b2. And certainly with a black's dark squared bishop on b6, well away from the king side, black's king side dark squares are quite weak. Here, Stockfish against AlphaZero really began to play too riskily, I think. But the position is definitely not without venom. For example, in some of my Fat Fritz against Stockfish games, wasn't queen b8. Castles was tried quite a bit by Stockfish. Stockfish 11, of course, which I've got on my machine, and then. What actually happened was bishop d3, knight f4, and funnily enough, when I put some engines on to analyse for 6 hours in this position, they're all looking at this move bishop f1, and then looking for g3, or after black plays knight g6, you carry on with something else. But the only move that Fat Fritz wanted to consider was bishop b1, and this led to actually one of the quickest wins it's ever had against Stockfish in my rapid matches. So, and this, I mean, actually, it just looks really, really strong. So, knight g2, king f1, knight f4, rook g1. Why do you need castling if you're just going to give up the g pawn and come in through the g file? Knight e7 was one line that Stockfish was trying towards the end, but I mean, c takes d5 followed by d6 is huge, and Fat Fritz won some great games with that. Bishop d7.
White's got so many open lines here, like both rooks on open lines and the bishop diagonal is pointing straight against.
It's true, isn't it? Just, I mean, you look at the white position and some slightly funny moves, but actually all of the pieces are coordinating hugely. Yeah, I mean, this was a thing. The rook came into c4, over to f4, sacrifices everything. And this game was also quite nice. Bishop d7, rook g4, knight g6, h4. Obviously, there's loads of these Greek gift bishop takes h7 check sacrifices, coming in as well once if black moves the knight away. So queen b8, h5, takes, rook g7, queen g4, and then the coup de grace, this gorgeous move h6, of course, threatening queen g7 mate. And after rook g8, then queen f4 is an absolute killer, threatening both bishop takes c5 and queen f6 check. So, I mean, those variations are just really, really dangerous, you know, and, well, if Stockfish had such a rough time defending it, you know, even at a fast time control, then it's obviously, you know, there's a lot wrong with it, basically. So, against AlphaZero, Stockfish played queen b8. Again, you know, trying to renew this attack on the e5 pawn, but AlphaZero just ignores it completely. Bishop d3, knight takes e5, knight takes c5, takes, and bishop b1. And this is really very unpleasant for black. If you look at the white queenside pieces, you know, you've got a bishop on b2, bishop on b1, beautifully pointing towards the black king, a rook on c1 even, rather than a1. You know, even the rook on c1 is able to join in the fun. And well, you see why that's important, because, I mean, actually, if black plays castles, it's not just a question of black losing a pawn back. Black's actually completely lost. You get the standard trick, bishop h7, queen h5 check, bishop e5, and after queen a7, or after bishop c7, it doesn't really matter which, you've got this great idea, bishop g7, this Lasker sacrifice, takes check, and rook c3, and the rook's coming over to h3, or even to g3, which would be, you know, quite a nice way of doing it. So this is absolutely just lost for black. And if black can't, John Spielman always says, you know, that there's always moves that you want to play in the position, and you say, if I can do this, then my position's fine. And castles is really the move that you say, well, if I can do this, then my position's fine. If my position's lost when I do that, then I'm probably in big trouble. And, well, I think that's definitely the case. I mean, I thought that the best defensive move was f6. And when I was analysing it, I was looking at this line, queen h5 check and queen h6. My engines find other things, but I think in the end they kind of grudgingly admitted that this was maybe the best line. White is coming in with queen g7, obviously. Black does have this little a little trick here. He can play, for example, bishop takes f2. But then I just play king e2, ignore it, and then afterwards, you know, I can just bring my rook into the f file. I think this was a one of these, this was a Stockfish Fat Fritz game where Stockfish was just completely, you know, killing the black position there. Very, very strong. And what was the other thing I was looking at? Knight f7 is interesting. But I can even play queen h4. Queen g7 isn't bad, but sorry. Oh, good lord. Queen g7 isn't bad. Then I was wondering about queen f4, attacking f2 and getting some counterplay. But my engines liked queen h4, g5, queen h5, and that extra weakening has really turned out to be, you know, turns out to be very difficult. g3 and then castles, and I'm going to play f4. You know, the black position is just so difficult. You can't castle kingside now because there's mate on h7. It's just, you know, a real disaster for black. Very, very unpleasant. So I guess Stockfish calculated its way now to the position we'll get in about 7 or 8 moves. But it's it gets the queens off and it sort of keeps material balance. But it's not, I mean, it is just losing in actual fact. Bishop d7, queen h5, attacking that knight. Knight takes c4, takes. And now there are other possibilities actually, but castles is simply what AlphaZero played. And just leaving black with, well, with all the problems of the position. I mean, bishop takes g7 is a huge threat. And, you know, well, what can black do? You know, it's just, you can't castle kingside, you can't play f6, g6 is horrific. Very, very difficult. Well, Stockfish, you know, spies this amazing tactical possibility that you wouldn't think was in the position. Queen f4, bishop e5, basically just trying to drive the queen away. And then bishop takes f2 check. So rook f2 allows queen c1. But white plays king h1, queen h4, and then queen f3. hitting f2, and obviously you can't move that bishop on f2 because f7 is hanging. But this was Stockfish's plan: bishop c6, takes. And well, as always, from a position that looked as if black was going to get mated within a few moves, Stockfish has managed to transform this into well, actually an ending where it has 3 pawns for the piece. The only problem is that well, white's got the 2 bishops, which is a very big advantage. Also, those black dark squares are really quite vulnerable already, and well, as you'll see, AlphaZero just keeps on going. This is just actually
you'd still prefer to be white in this position?
Oh, I think it's just a win, to be honest, long term. And I'll just show you some a number of moves more. The game lasts a reasonable amount of time, but there's never any doubt. So f6, bishop c3, king e7. So AlphaZero just goes into to make sure it gets in this move a4, just to make sure that that it's got a possibility of opening the queen side. This move h4.
A4 and h4 are consecutive moves.
Exactly. It prevents black from from gaining any space on the king side. And why give away advantages to black? You just don't need to. So bishop c2, rook f1. We're just going to bring the other rook into play. And now white's next idea. You see how beautifully that bishop on c2 and bishop on c3 cover all the entry squares for black rooks on the d file, so white doesn't need to worry about that. And now white simply goes about, actually black doesn't do a good job of resisting really, simply goes about weakening the dark squares. So, and once the dark squares are opened, actually you're going to see that all of black's pawns are on the light squares, which is the colour of his bishop. So that hasn't gone very well at all. And now white's just got a huge amount of entry points. So just bishop d2, just making sure that those black kingside pawns are pinned down. And then the king comes in. And well, this is basically pretty trivial. The king comes in, and the rook gets the a file to invade. And well, I think about 20 or 30 moves later, AlphaZero didn't take its time, but AlphaZero won. And I'll put the rest of the PGN in the chat there, just so you can play through all the game if you want to. So there we are. That's our first video on this 5c3 system, very unusual system, against the Khenkin-Arkell. Yeah, I was when I saw this move first of all, I thought, oh, that looks just very quiet and innocuous. But as always, AlphaZero manages to inject quite a lot of spice into the position, and certainly this idea of playing b4 followed by a quick c4, very surprising. And but the more you look at it, the more you realise how strong it is. So anyway, I hope you enjoyed that. In the next video, we'll have a look at the main move, knight c6, which leads to well, some very complicated and interesting and rich positions in which I was very dubious about what the evaluation would be, but well, AlphaZero was clear, and actually also my engines were very clear that this was turning out very good for white. So very exciting game to look at in the next video. But anyway, hope you've enjoyed that. If you haven't subscribed to our channel yet,
it's free. Press the red button.
Exactly. Press the red button. Also, do take a look at Game Changer, our great book about AlphaZero and Stockfish. And otherwise, keep well, keep safe, and keep on watching. Thanks for watching.
Thank you for watching.